find out more. Arrive alive, drive sober.
This program is designed and produced by the community with the support of TV Cogeco.
Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us for this very special edition of At Home. It's at this time of year that we remember those who have given their lives for us and those whose lives have been forever affected by the service they have provided as the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces. On November 11th, many of us will stand at the cenotaph amongst our veterans and pay tribute to those who have lost their lives. And certainly, with the activities and the events of recent weeks, it becomes even more poignant and more special to us this year. I had the great opportunity to sit down with Mr. George St.Cyr, who served in World War II, and at the age of 89 is sitting with me at this very special moment to receive an award for his service and to talk about the impact that it had on his life. Join me now for the interview with Mr. George St.Cyr. Welcome back, and I'm so thrilled to introduce you to Mr. George St.Cyr and his beautiful bride, Renee. And, you know, they've been telling me their love story, and it's just an awesome, awesome story. But really, we're here to start to talk anyway about you, sir, because you have quite a little story to tell, and we'll get into this. But I want to know, you served in World War II. Mm-hmm. Tell me how you landed up in service to begin with.
Well, in those days, you know, at the age I was in, most of my friends had gone, right, or were going, and I decided, well, I better get some of that adventure too before it's all over. So I went down and joined up. I wasn't quite 18 at the time. Wow. And I went down to the recruitment office, and they said they couldn't take me because of my age, but if you get your parents' permission, you can go in, you know, at 17. And they gave me a form to bring home. That wasn't very pleasant, but they did sign it.
Yeah, because you were pretty determined, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, you could go in the Navy at 17, no questions asked. I didn't want to go there. That's not what I was interested in.
Right. So what were you interested in?
I can't think of anything in particular.
But in the Army, you were going to be able to work with?
Well, I wanted to get into the Armored Corps.
Right.
Because I had a very interest in mechanical things. I thought that was probably the best way to go. Yeah. So I was, after I finished basic training, I was sent to Camp Borden for advanced training. And there I was trained as a tank gunner. I was also trained as a wireless operator, which was a great thing. I didn't know it at the time, but that was considered a trade. And at the time, the pay was $1.50. And that's not an hour, that's a day.
Oh my gosh.
$1.50 a day. And after I finished my wireless training, I got trades pay for 25 cents. So it was up to $1.75 a day.
But at the time, it was great.
Well, beer was 10 cents then. You had to put it in perspective, you know.
Beer was 10 cents. So you get shipped out, and, well, aired out. You get deployed. And you go to?
England.
England.
You go to England, and then you start your training all over again. You know? And eventually, you know, things got pretty hot on the continent. Kept moving, when we were fully trained, it kept moving us closer and closer to a port. Right. And then ended up on the top of a small tugboat. A little fidget was put on this thing.
Wow.
It wasn't a very comfortable ride. The weather wasn't too bad, but you had to find a place in this hard little, not very much deck on the tugboat.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, made it across. There was no problem. There was no escort or nothing. You just came across. They were very fast.
Mm-hmm.
And landed us in France. And fortunately, I was 2 weeks after the initial assault, so I didn't get my feet wet. They had been bringing over this mulberry harbor that they've been building over there in the UK. And so it pulled up on one of these floating docks. I just stepped off and I didn't get my feet wet and landed in France. It was a little bit scary at the time. You could hear the guns going off.
Yeah, yeah. And was that the sort of the first exposure you had to, hearing the guns going off at such a close range and, the reality of kind of where you were and what you were in, I would imagine hit.
It really did, yeah. There's no question about that at all.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then, so you served, so continue. So you were in France.
So anyway, we eventually we went along. And one thing I'd like to mention is that Caen was the first major city that had to be taken on the Ridge Peninsula. And I was just appalled at the damage that was there. There was just rubble. They had to use bulldozers to clear a road so we could get through the place. But there was a big cathedral there. And it was interesting. I had a good look at it. And when I went back in 1990, the first thing I wanted to see was that cathedral.
Right.
It was put back. It had never been hit.
Wow.
It was unbelievable.
Wow.
And inside they had a room there, and they had pictures of what it looked like when I saw it the first time.
Wow. Brought back a lot of memories. Yeah.
It's
So
amazing.
yeah. So then, so you were in France,
Yeah.
and then
It carried on
yeah.
all through France and went through Belgium and the Netherlands, of course. And
Right.
when the war ended, I was in Germany all the way in.
What was the so when the war ended and you were in Germany? Do you remember the day?
Well, the war ended May the 8th.
Yeah. Do you remember what it was like
Well,
when you heard the war had ended?
the war ended, and we were sitting around our armored cars. I was with the Manitoba Goons then, and we did reconnaissance work.
Yeah.
And we had our radios on, and we were listening to the radio. They were telling us, what was happening. But there was machine gun fire down the road where we were. That really scared me. I was sure I'm not going to kill the last day.
And you didn't. You didn't.
I was in here.
Yeah, that's right. So you got to come home, and you were telling me earlier that you served 3 years.
Yeah.
And in that 3 years, of course, you don't get to come home. But there were fellows who had signed up for 5 years.
Yeah.
And they didn't get to come home. So tell me the story about the one fellow again.
Well, we had one in particular in our outfit. We were shelled quite badly one night, and he had a piece of shrapnel go through the cheeks of his rump. We had him put him on a stretcher with his face down. And we're all happy for him. He's going to go home.
So that was the way you got to go home. So, anyway, at least, and in the next segment, we're going to talk to the Osbornes, who, when I spoke to them, they were telling me how different it was in that today they have more connection and they have more connection with their son when he was in Afghanistan. So that'll be interesting. Now, you have had an honor bestowed on you that I want to read and I want to show. You have received, by the order of the President of the Republic of France, you have been awarded the rank of Knight of the French National Order of the Legion of Honor as of September 8, 2014. Please accept my sincere congratulations in this regard. This distinction illustrates the profound gratitude that France would like to express to you. It is awarded in recognition of your professional involvement in the liberation of our country. Through you, France remembers the sacrifice of all your compatriots who came to liberate French soil after losing their lives in the process. that is quite an honor. This was, the process began right here at home, and when you found out you were being awarded this, what did you think?
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So,
What does it mean?
well, it means that they recognize what the Canadians did when they went to France and liberated their country. And that's what this is all about, really. Showing appreciation.
And Renee, I know that you were extremely excited too when you found out that George was getting this. Tell me what was going on inside of you at the time.
Well, I believed it because Laurie had been in touch with me, and so I knew a little bit more, but we kept it from George until, you know, the official letter came. And so to me it was a bit more real, but I was so darn proud of him because I knew what he had gone through being from Holland and in the war. I was a little girl from 4 to 9 years old, like when the war was on. And so I knew what he had gone through. And then to be awarded this, they came through and honored not only George, but the ones that lost their lives there and the ones that came back. Because I don't think everybody got an award, but you know, they were all equally in it together. And so, but it's still nice to get an award, and it's for all the soldiers that were there.
So included in this is a little tiny pin, and I don't know if we were able to get that, but see this little tiny pin here? Tell me about this little pin, George.
Fortunately, I worked with a fellow who was in the Air Force during the war and was shot down into France. And he received this honor way back then. But anyway, when I was working with this fellow, and he always had this little red ribbon in his lapel button. And I asked him what it was. And he said, well, if you get this award, they give you that, and you always should wear that in your lapel button. So when I saw this in the box, I knew what it was.
So it's recognizing the award that you
Right.
you are receiving. We have to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you for everything that you have done and for the pride you've had in your man. There's so many more stories just like this, and you know what, I gotta tell you something really, really quickly. George gave her candy when she was a little girl and he was in Holland, and that's their story, and they're gonna stick to it. Anyway, when we come back, I'll introduce you to a family, parents of Matt Osborne. We'll be right back.
They answered the call, suffered the sacrifices, and returned to the reserve without celebration or ceremony. A warrior's legacy.